In the golden hour light, a stark contrast unfolds. While some struggle to survive,
Marcus froze with a spoon halfway to Elena's mouth. The sound hit him first, not the usual Chicago noise of honking cabs and street vendors, but something different. Smooth, heavy, powerful, like a storm made of money. Black Mercedes SUVs rolled up to his small street bakery stand, one after another, forming a wall of expensive metal. Men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the area like Secret Service agents. Then a door opened. A polished shoe touched the cracked sidewalk. A man emerged, tall, sharp, wearing a navy suit that cost more than Marcus made in a year. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, his face carved with authority. The man's eyes swept the street, then locked onto Marcus's humble bakery cart. He began walking toward it, calm and purposeful. Marcus's heart pounded. His hand still held the spoon of soup he'd been feeding to Elena, the dying girl he'd found collapsed behind his bakery 3 days ago. The powerful man stepped closer. His face was tight with something Marcus couldn't quite read. Not anger. Something deeper. Pain, maybe. Or hope. Then the man's eyes found Elena sitting weakly on the folding chair. His breath caught. His shoulders jerked like he'd been punched in the chest. And suddenly this man, this billionaire who looked like he could buy half of Chicago, dropped to his knees on the dirty sidewalk and began to cry. "My daughter," he whispered, voice breaking. "Elena." Marcus's world stopped spinning. His ears rang. His mouth went dry. "Daughter?" If you're enjoying this story of compassion and unexpected destiny, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that will touch your heart. Comment below. What would you have done in Marcus's situation? Let's discuss. Tell me which party of country. 3 days earlier, rain had just stopped falling on the south side of Chicago. Marcus Stone was closing up his street bakery cart when he heard it, a soft sound from behind the dumpster near the alley. At first, he thought it was a cat. But something about that sound made him look again. That's when he saw her. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, collapsed against the brick wall. Her clothes were torn and dirty. Her skin was pale, almost gray. Her eyes were barely open, staring at nothing. Marcus had hesitated. Not because he didn't care, but because Chicago streets weren't always kind. Helping strangers could bring trouble, police questions, gang problems, false accusations. He'd learned that the hard way growing up in these neighborhoods. But then she whispered one word. Water. And Marcus knew he couldn't walk away. He'd knelt down beside her, checking for injuries. No blood, no broken bones that he could see. Just severe weakness, dehydration, and something else, a look in her eyes that said she'd given up. "Hey," Marcus said softly. "Can you stand?" She shook her head weakly. Marcus looked around. His bakery cart was small, just a converted food truck he'd bought used 5 years ago. Behind it was a tiny space where he stored supplies and sometimes slept when rent was late on his studio apartment. He made a decision. Carefully, he helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight. She could barely walk. Step by step, he guided her to the back of his cart and into the small storage area. He cleared some flour sacks and laid down his only blanket. "Just rest," he told her. "I'll get you some water." She nodded weakly, her eyes already closing. Marcus grabbed a clean bottle of water from his cart and brought it back. He helped her sit up enough to drink. She took small sips, her throat working slowly like even swallowing hurt. "What's your name?" Marcus asked gently. She looked at him for a long moment, like she was trying to remember. "Elena," she finally whispered. "I'm Marcus. You're safe here, okay? But we should get you to a hospital." She shook her head quickly, panic flashing in her eyes. "No, please. No hospitals." Marcus frowned. "You're really sick. You need help." "No," she repeated, tears forming. "They'll find me." Those words sent a chill down Marcus's spine. They. Whoever they were, She was terrified of them. Okay, Marcus said carefully. No hospitals. But you need food and rest. Can you tell me what happened? Elena's eyes closed. She was fading again. Tired, she whispered. So tired. Marcus didn't push. He covered her with the blanket and stepped back outside. His mind raced. He should call the police. But something about her fear stopped him. What if she was running from something? What if calling the police made it worse? He decided to wait. One night. He'd give her food and water, let her rest, and see if she could talk in the morning. That night, Marcus barely slept. He kept checking on Elena every hour. Each time, she was breathing, but barely. Her forehead felt warm. Maybe a fever starting. At dawn, he made soup from the bakery supplies he had. Chicken broth, soft bread, a little salt. Nothing fancy, but warm and easy to digest. When he brought it to her, Elena's eyes opened slightly. You're still here, she whispered, sounding surprised. Of course, Marcus said. Come on, you need to eat. He helped her sit up and fed her slowly, one spoonful at a time. She could barely keep her eyes open, but she swallowed each bite. After a few spoonfuls, she dozed off again. Marcus sat back and watched her sleep. He wondered who she was, where she'd come from, what she was running from. But mostly, he wondered if she would survive. For 3 days, Marcus Stone's life became a quiet battle against death. Every morning before sunrise, he woke up and checked on Elena. Some mornings she was awake, staring at the ceiling with hollow eyes. Other mornings she was so still that Marcus's heart would stop until he saw her chest rise and fall. He fed her 3 times a day. Soup, mostly. Sometimes soft bread soaked in warm milk. Once, he managed to get her to eat a few bites of scrambled eggs. Each meal was a victory. The routine became sacred. Wake up. Check on Elena. Make food. Feed her. Work at the bakery cart. Check on Elena. Make food. Feed her. Close the cart. Check on Elena. Feed her again. Sleep a few hours. Repeat. Marcus's regular customers noticed he was distracted. Mrs. Chen, who bought blueberry muffins every Tuesday, asked if he was feeling okay. You look tired, Marcus, she said with concern. Just working a lot, Marcus replied with a tired smile. He couldn't tell anyone. Elena had made him promise. On the second day, when she was awake enough to talk, she'd grabbed his hand with surprising strength. Don't tell anyone I'm here, she'd whispered urgently. Please. They're looking for me. Who's looking for you? Marcus had asked. But Elena just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I can't. If I tell you, you'll be in danger too. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to insist she go to the police or a hospital. But the fear in her eyes was real. So he agreed to keep her secret, at least for now. By the 3rd day, Elena was slightly stronger. She could sit up on her own, though she still couldn't stand without help. Her color was better. Less gray, more human. That afternoon, as Marcus fed her vegetable soup, she finally spoke more than a few words. Why are you helping me? Elena asked quietly, watching him with those haunted eyes. Marcus paused, the spoon halfway to her mouth. He'd asked himself that same question 100 times. Because you needed help, he said simply. And because nobody helped me when I needed it. Elena tilted her head, curious despite her weakness. Marcus sighed. When I was 19, I was homeless for 6 months. I slept in shelters, under bridges, anywhere I could. I was hungry all the time. And people just walked past me. Like I wasn't even human. He remembered those days too well. The cold Chicago nights. The shame of begging. The way people avoided eye contact. One day, Marcus continued, I was so hungry I almost passed out. This old woman, she must have been 70, stopped and gave me $20 and a sandwich. She didn't ask questions. Didn't judge me. Just helped. What happened? Elena asked softly. I used that money to buy supplies and started selling cookies on the street. Took me years, but eventually I saved enough to buy this cart. He gestured around them. It's not much, but it's mine. And I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd help someone else the way that woman helped me. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve this kindness. Everyone deserves kindness, Marcus said firmly. Now eat your soup before it gets cold. A small smile touched Elena's lips, the first smile Marcus had seen from her. That evening, as the sun set over the Chicago skyline, Elena was awake and sitting up against the wall. Marcus had just finished cleaning the bakery cart and was preparing her dinner when she spoke again. Marcus, she said quietly, there are bad people looking for me. If they find you helping me. Let me worry about that, Marcus interrupted gently. You don't understand, Elena insisted, her voice trembling. These aren't normal bad people. They're connected. Powerful. She started coughing, a deep, painful cough that shook her whole body. Marcus rushed over with water. Easy, easy. Don't talk. Just rest. But Elena grabbed his arm, her grip weak but desperate. Promise me, she gasped between coughs. Promise me if they come, you'll say you don't know me. You'll say I was just a stranger you found and already left. Elena. Promise me, she insisted, her eyes wild with fear. Marcus looked at this young woman who'd been slowly dying behind his bakery cart. Whatever she was running from had terrified her to her core. I promise, he said quietly, though he had no intention of keeping it. Some promises were meant to be broken. The sound came first. Marcus froze with the spoon halfway to Elena's mouth. It wasn't the usual Chicago street noise, not the honking taxis, not the bus brakes squealing, not the street vendors shouting about hot dogs and pretzels. This sound was different. Smooth. Heavy. Powerful. Elena heard it too. Her eyes widened with fear. The soup spoon clattered from Marcus's hand. No, Elena whispered, her voice breaking. No, no, no. They found me. Who? Marcus asked, but he was already standing up, moving toward the front of his bakery cart. What he saw made his blood run cold. Black Mercedes SUVs, not one, not two, but 5, rolled slowly down the street like a presidential motorcade. Their windows were tinted so dark you couldn't see inside. Their chrome gleamed in the afternoon sun. They moved in perfect formation, blocking traffic, forcing other cars to the side. People on the street stopped and stared. Some pulled out phones to record. Others backed away instinctively. The SUVs pulled up directly in front of Marcus's small bakery cart, forming a semicircle that felt more like a trap than a parking job. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest. His small cart, with its faded paint and handwritten menu board, looked like a toy next to these vehicles. The doors opened in unison. Men stepped out, big men in dark suits and sunglasses. They moved with military precision, fanning out across the sidewalk, scanning the area with professional intensity. One spoke quietly into his wrist. Marcus had never seen anything like this outside of movies. These weren't cops. These weren't regular security guards. These were the kind of people who protected presidents and billionaires. What have I gotten myself into? Behind him, inside the storage area, Elena was trying to stand. Marcus could hear her struggling, whispering no over and over like a prayer. The street had gone quiet. Even the traffic seemed to hold its breath. Then the front door of the lead SUV opened. Slowly. Deliberately. A polished black leather shoe touched the cracked Chicago sidewalk. Then another. And a man stepped out. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled out his navy suit perfectly. His salt and pepper hair was styled immaculately. His face was clean-shaven, sharp-featured, the kind of face you'd see on the cover of Forbes magazine. But what struck Marcus most were his eyes. Hard, intelligent, and filled with something Marcus couldn't quite identify. Pain, desperation, hope. The man looked around once, his gaze sweeping the street like a king surveying his kingdom. Then his eyes locked onto Marcus's bakery cart. He began walking toward it. Each step was measured, controlled, but Marcus could sense the tension beneath the calm exterior. This was a man barely holding himself together. Marcus wanted to run, wanted to hide, wanted to wake up and realize this was all a nightmare. But his legs wouldn't move. He stood there in his flour-stained apron, his hands still dirty from making bread, feeling more exposed than he'd ever felt in his life. The man reached the cart. Up close, he was even more imposing. The suit probably cost more than Marcus made in a year. The watch on his wrist could probably buy Marcus's entire bakery operation 10 times over. "Are you Marcus Stone?" the man asked. His voice was deep, controlled, but trembling slightly at the edges. Marcus swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." The man's jaw tightened. "I'm looking for someone. A young woman. My daughter. She's been missing for 2 weeks." Marcus's mind raced. He remembered Elena's desperate plea, "Promise me if they come, you'll say you don't know me." But before Marcus could speak, there was a sound from behind his cart. A gasp. A sob. The man's head snapped toward the sound. His eyes widened. His breath caught in his throat. "Elena," he whispered. And then he moved. Not slowly. Not carefully. He rushed past Marcus, around the bakery cart, into the small storage area. Marcus followed, his heart in his throat. The man stood frozen in the doorway, staring at Elena. She was sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall, wrapped in Marcus's old blanket. Her hair was tangled. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red from crying. But she was alive. The man's face crumpled. His carefully controlled expression shattered like glass. And this powerful man, this billionaire who commanded armies of security guards and drove in convoys, dropped to his knees on the dirty floor. "My baby," he choked out, tears streaming down his face. "My baby girl." Elena reached out with shaking hands. "Daddy," she whispered. Marcus stood in the doorway, watching as the man pulled Elena into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. Both of them were crying, shaking, clinging to each other. Marcus felt like an intruder witnessing something too private, too raw. But then the man looked up at him, tears on his cheeks, and said 2 words that changed everything. "Thank you." The man held Elena for what felt like forever, but was probably only a few minutes. Marcus stood awkwardly by the doorway, not knowing whether to stay or give them privacy. Finally, one of the security guards spoke urgently. "Sir, we need to move her now. She needs medical attention immediately." The man, Elena's father, nodded sharply. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand and looked at Elena with a mixture of relief and fear. "Can you stand, sweetheart?" Elena tried, but her legs buckled. The weeks of captivity and 3 days of barely eating had left her too weak. Without hesitation, her father scooped her up in his arms like she weighed nothing. The expensive suit, the powerful presence, none of it mattered. In that moment, he was just a father carrying his sick child. As he turned to leave, he paused and looked at Marcus. Really looked at him. "You," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved her." Marcus shook his head. "I just gave her food and water, sir. Anyone would have." "No," the man interrupted firmly. "Most people would have walked past. Most people would have called the police and moved on. You took her in. You cared for her." His eyes glistened with fresh tears. "Thank you." Marcus didn't know what to say. One of the guards stepped forward. "Sir, we really need to go." Elena's father nodded, then turned back to Marcus one more time. "Come with us. Please. You know her condition better than anyone. The doctors will need to know what you've observed." It wasn't really a question. It was a command wrapped in courtesy. Before Marcus could respond, A guard gently but firmly took his arm. Within minutes, Marcus found himself sitting in the back of one of the Mercedes SUVs, still wearing his flower-covered apron, watching Chicago streets blur past through tinted windows. Elena and her father were in the vehicle ahead. The convoy moved fast, running red lights while police cars appeared from nowhere to block intersections for them. Marcus's head spun. 20 minutes ago, he'd been feeding soup to a dying girl. Now he was in a billionaire's motorcade, racing through Chicago like the president was in town. They arrived at a private medical facility on the north side, the kind of place that didn't have signs or advertisements, where patients arrived in helicopters and limousines. Doctors and nurses were already waiting outside. Elena was whisked away immediately on a gurney. Her father followed, refusing to let go of her hand. A nurse directed Marcus to a waiting room that looked more like a luxury hotel lobby. Leather couches, fresh flowers, a coffee bar with a real barista. Marcus sat down heavily, his legs finally giving out. He stared at his hands, still dirty from baking, still smelling like bread and flour. He didn't belong here. Hours passed. Marcus dozed off once or twice, exhausted from 3 days of barely sleeping. Each time he woke, he half expected to find himself back at his bakery cart, realizing this had all been a dream. Finally, the door opened. Elena's father walked in, his suit jacket gone, his tie loosened, his face showing the strain of the day. But his eyes were lighter, hopeful. "She's stable," he said, sitting down across from Marcus. "Severely dehydrated, malnourished, and weak, but the doctors say she'll recover." He closed his eyes briefly. "Thanks to you." Marcus shook his head. "I really didn't do much, sir. Just basic food and water." "You did everything," the man said firmly. Then he extended his hand. "I'm Robert Hayes." Marcus shook his hand, recognizing the name immediately. Robert Hayes, CEO of Hayes International, one of the largest real estate development companies in America. The man was worth billions. His buildings dotted Chicago's skyline. "I know who you are, sir," Marcus said quietly. Robert smiled sadly. "And I know who you are now too, Marcus Stone. Street baker. 32 years old. No criminal record. Pays his city permits on time. Known in the neighborhood for being honest and kind." He saw Marcus's surprised expression. "I had my people do a background check while Elena was being examined. I hope you don't mind." Marcus didn't know how to feel about that. "I understand, sir. You needed to know who had your daughter." "I needed to know if I could trust you," Robert corrected. "And everything I found tells me I can." He leaned forward. "Tell me everything. How you found her. What she said. Every detail." So Marcus did. He told Robert about finding Elena collapsed in the alley. About her fear of hospitals and police. About her terror that they would find her. About 3 days of feeding her, watching her hover between life and death. Robert listened to every word, his jaw clenching tighter with each detail. When Marcus finished, Robert was quiet for a long moment. "The people who took her," Robert finally said, his voice cold with controlled rage, "are going to pay for what they did." The way he said it made Marcus believe him completely. Marcus was allowed to see Elena 2 hours later. She was in a private room that looked more like a 5-star hotel suite than a hospital. Soft lighting, expensive furniture, flowers already arriving in elegant vases. Elena was sitting up in bed, hooked to an 4, but looking more alive than Marcus had seen her in days. Her color had returned. Her eyes were clearer. When she saw him, she smiled. "You came. Your father insisted," Marcus said, feeling awkward standing in the doorway. "Come sit," Elena said, gesturing to the chair beside her bed. "Please." Marcus sat down carefully. Now that she was safe, surrounded by wealth and medical care, he felt even more out of place. "I never got to thank you properly," Elena said softly. "You saved my life, Marcus. I just did what anyone should do." "But most people wouldn't," she said, echoing her father's words. Most people would have called the police or walked away. Her eyes filled with tears. You could have gotten in trouble helping me. But you did it anyway. Before Marcus could respond, the door opened. Robert Hayes walked in, followed by two other people, a woman in a business suit carrying a briefcase, and a man in a police uniform. Marcus's stomach dropped. "Elena, sweetheart," Robert said gently. "This is Detective Morrison. He needs to ask you some questions about what happened. Are you up for that?" Elena nodded, but Marcus noticed her hands gripping the bedsheet tighter. Detective Morrison pulled out a notebook. He was older, maybe late 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes that had probably seen too much. "Miss Hayes, I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell me everything you remember about your kidnapping." Elena took a deep breath. "I was leaving the yoga studio near my apartment. It was evening, around 7 o'clock. I was walking to my car when a van pulled up beside me." Her voice shook. "Two men grabbed me. They put something over my face, a cloth. It smelled terrible, and everything went black." Marcus watched as Elena recounted her nightmare. Being held in a dark basement. Multiple men, their faces always covered. Demands for ransom sent to her father. Days of terror. "Then I got sick," Elena continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I stopped eating. I couldn't keep anything down. I heard them arguing about what to do with me." Tears streamed down her face. "One of them said they should just kill me and dump my body." Robert's hands clenched into fists. Marcus felt his own anger rising. "But then something changed," Elena said. "I heard them arguing more. One voice," he sounded younger, kept saying it wasn't right. That they'd already gotten some ransom money, that killing me would bring too much heat. She wiped her eyes. "I think he convinced them. Because one night, they put me in a car, drove for a long time, and dumped me in an alley." "Which alley?" Detective Morrison asked. "I don't know. I could barely think straight by then. I just remember cold pavement, the smell of garbage, and rain." Marcus spoke up. "That was the alley behind my bakery cart. On South State Street." Detective Morrison turned to Marcus, his eyes assessing. "And you found her when?" "About 3 days ago. Late evening, after the rain stopped." "And you didn't call the police?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. "She asked me not to," Marcus said carefully. "She was terrified. She said they would find her. So you kept her hidden in your bakery cart for 3 days?" The detective's tone had shifted. No longer neutral. Suspicious. Marcus felt his face flush. "I kept her safe. I fed her. I took care of her because she was dying and too scared to go to a hospital." "That's an interesting story, Mr. Stone," Detective Morrison said, flipping through his notebook. "Tell me, did you know who Elena Hayes was when you found her?" "No." "You didn't recognize her? The daughter of one of Chicago's richest men? Her face was all over the news." "I don't watch the news," Marcus said, his voice tight. "I work 16-hour days trying to keep my business alive. I don't have time for TV. Convenient." Robert stood up sharply. "Detective, what exactly are you implying?" Detective Morrison's expression was cool. "I'm not implying anything, Mr. Hayes. I'm investigating. Your daughter was kidnapped, held for ransom, and then mysteriously appeared at Mr. Stone's bakery cart." He looked at Marcus. Some might find that timing very convenient. Marcus's heart pounded. "You think I was involved?" "I think it's interesting that a struggling street baker happened to find the daughter of a billionaire right when the kidnappers wanted to get rid of her." Detective Morrison closed his notebook. "I think it's worth investigating." The room fell silent. Elena was staring at the detective in horror. Robert's face had gone red with anger. But before anyone could speak, the woman in the business suit stepped forward. "Detective Morrison," she said calmly, "before you pursue this line of questioning further, You should know that we've already conducted a thorough background check on Mr. Stone. He has no connection to any criminal organizations. No unusual financial transactions. No contact with any of the suspects we've identified. And who exactly are you? The detective asked. Jessica Park, head of security for Hayes International, she replied. And I've spent the last 4 hours investigating Mr. Stone's life. She looked at Marcus. His story checks out. He's exactly what he appears to be, a good man who helped someone in need. Detective Morrison didn't look convinced, but he nodded. Fine. But I'll need to ask more questions later. After he left, Robert turned to Marcus. I apologize for that. He's just doing his job. But Marcus was already standing, his face burning with humiliation. I should go. Elena's safe now. That's what matters. Marcus, wait, Elena started. But Marcus was already walking out the door. Marcus didn't go home that night. He walked the streets of Chicago for hours, his mind spinning. He'd done the right thing. He'd saved a dying girl's life. And now he was being treated like a criminal. By the time he reached his bakery cart the next morning, the sun was rising over Lake Michigan. Marcus stood there, looking at his small business. The cart he'd bought with 5 years of saved pennies, the hand-painted sign, the fold-out serving window. It wasn't much. But it was his. Built on honesty and hard work. Marcus started his morning routine on autopilot. Mix the dough. Heat the ovens. Prepare the coffee. Set out the pastries. But his heart wasn't in it. He kept seeing Detective Morrison's suspicious eyes. Kept hearing the accusation hidden in his questions. Around 8 a.m., his first regular customer arrived. Mr. Patterson, a retired teacher who bought a blueberry muffin and black coffee every morning. You look terrible, Marcus, Mr. Patterson said with concern. Everything okay? Marcus forced a smile. Just tired, sir. Here's your muffin. The morning dragged on. Marcus served customers, made change, cleaned the counter. But his mind was elsewhere. Around noon, he heard it again. That sound. The smooth, powerful rumble of expensive engines. Marcus's stomach dropped. Not again. But when he looked up, he saw only 2 SUVs this time. They parked across the street, and Robert Hayes stepped out, alone, without the security detail. He was wearing jeans and a casual shirt. Marcus had never seen a billionaire in jeans before. Robert crossed the street and approached the cart. Marcus. We need to talk. Mr. Hayes, if this is about the detective. It's not, Robert interrupted. Well, not entirely. He looked around. Is there somewhere we can talk privately? Marcus led him to the small storage area behind the cart, the same space where Elena had spent 3 days recovering. Robert looked around, taking in the cramped space, the thin blanket still folded in the corner, the few supplies Marcus kept there. This is where she stayed? Robert asked quietly. Yes, sir. Robert picked up the blanket, holding it carefully. You gave her your own blanket. It's all I had. Robert's eyes were wet when he looked up. My daughter told me what happened. All of it. How scared she was. How you fed her with your own hands. How you sat with her at night when she had nightmares. His voice broke. You treated her like she mattered. Not because of who her father was. You didn't even know who I was. You helped her because she needed help. Marcus didn't know what to say. The detective was wrong, Robert continued. And I made sure he knows that. You're not under investigation. You're not a suspect. He paused. You're a hero. I'm not a hero, Marcus protested. You saved my daughter's life, Robert said firmly. And I can never repay that debt. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. But I can try. Marcus stared at the envelope. Mr. Hayes, I don't want money. That's not why I helped her. I know, Robert said softly. Elena told me you'd say that. He pressed the envelope into Marcus's hand. Please. Just look at it. Marcus opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. A deed. What is this? It's the deed to a property on North Avenue, Robert explained. 3,000 square feet. Currently empty. Fully equipped commercial kitchen. Perfect for a bakery. He smiled. A real bakery, Marcus. Not a cart. A building. Marcus's hands shook. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. It's already done. The property is in your name. But this must be worth. It's worth less than my daughter's life, Robert said quietly. Please, Marcus. Let me do this. Not as payment. You can't pay someone for saving your child, but as a thank you. As a gift from a grateful father. Marcus's eyes blurred with tears. His whole life, he'd worked so hard just to survive. Just to keep his small cart running. And now this man was offering him a dream he'd never even dared to dream. I don't know what to say, Marcus whispered. Say yes, Robert said. Build something amazing. Hire people. Make the best pastries in Chicago. And every time you open those doors, remember that kindness matters. He put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. You saw someone suffering and you helped. That's rare. That's valuable. That's worth celebrating. Marcus wiped his eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. No, Robert said firmly. Thank you. Later that evening, after Robert had left, Marcus stood in front of his bakery cart. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The property is yours whenever you're ready. No rush. Take your time. Robert Hayes. Another text followed immediately. And Elena wants to know if you'll visit her. She misses your soup. Elena. Marcus smiled through his tears. His life had changed in 3 days. From a struggling street baker to the owner of a real bakery. All because he'd done the right thing. The grand opening of Stone's Bakery happened on a bright Saturday morning in October. The building on North Avenue had been transformed. The once empty commercial space now gleamed with stainless steel ovens, marble countertops, and warm lighting that made everything look inviting. Display cases showcased pastries, cakes, and breads that Marcus had spent weeks perfecting. But what made Marcus proudest wasn't the equipment or the beautiful space. It was the people. He'd hired 12 employees, all from his old neighborhood. People who needed second chances, just like he once did. Former addicts in recovery. Single mothers struggling to find work. Young people who'd made mistakes and couldn't get hired anywhere else. Marcus interviewed each one personally. He didn't ask about their past. He asked about their future. Can you show up on time? He'd ask. Can you work hard? Can you be honest? That was all that mattered. Now, 3 months after that life-changing day at his bakery cart, Marcus stood behind the counter of his own bakery, watching the line of customers stretch out the door. The mayor was there. Local news cameras. Food bloggers. And in the middle of it all, sitting at a corner table sipping coffee, was Elena Hayes. She'd recovered fully. Her color had returned, her strength restored. She looked like a completely different person from the dying girl Marcus had found 3 months ago. But more than that, she'd become his friend. Elena visited the bakery at least twice a week. At first, Marcus thought she came out of obligation, gratitude to the man who'd saved her. But over time, he realized she genuinely enjoyed being there. She'd sit at the corner table, laptop open, working on her graduate school applications. Sometimes she'd help behind the counter when the lunch rush got busy. She'd laugh with the staff, learn their stories, treat everyone like family. You built something special here, Elena said to Marcus during a quiet moment between customers. Marcus wiped down the counter, smiling. Your father built it. I'm just trying to make it work. No, Elena corrected gently. My father provided the building. You built the soul. She gestured around the bakery. Look at this place. Look at the people you've hired. The customers you've attracted. This isn't just about bread and pastries. This is about community. About second chances. Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotion. That's what someone gave me once. Felt right to pass it along. That afternoon, Robert Hayes stopped by. He'd started doing that, dropping in unannounced, wearing casual clothes, acting more like a regular customer than a billionaire. "How's business?" Robert asked, ordering a coffee and croissant. "Better than I ever imagined," Marcus admitted. "We're profitable already. That's rare for a new bakery." Robert nodded approvingly. "You have good instincts, Marcus. I've been watching. The way you run this place, the way you treat your staff, you're a natural businessman." Marcus laughed. "I wouldn't go that far, sir." "I would," Robert said seriously. "In fact, I have a proposition for you." Marcus's stomach tightened. In his experience, propositions from billionaires could change your life, for better or worse. "I'm opening a new hotel downtown," Robert continued. "Luxury property. And I need someone to run the bakery and cafe inside. Full creative control, your own staff, premium ingredients, unlimited budget." He paused. Interested. Marcus's mind spun. A hotel bakery? That was massive. That was prestigious. That was everything he'd never dared to dream about. That's an incredible opportunity, Mr. Hayes." "You've earned it," Robert said simply. "Think about it. No rush." After Robert left, Marcus stood behind his counter, looking around his bakery. The place he'd built. The people he'd hired. The community he'd created. Was he ready for something bigger? That evening, as Marcus locked up, Elena waited outside. "Walk with me," she asked. They walked along North Avenue as the sun set, painting the Chicago skyline in shades of orange and pink. "My father told me about his offer," Elena said after a while. "Yeah," Marcus replied. "It's amazing. I should be excited. But you're not." Marcus sighed. "I am. I think. It's just, this bakery feels like home. These people are my family. I'm scared of losing that if I expand too fast." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "You know what I learned from being kidnapped?" Marcus looked at her, surprised by the sudden shift. "I learned that the life I thought I wanted, the fancy degree, the high-powered career, the social status, none of that mattered when I was dying in that alley." She stopped walking and turned to face him. What mattered was kindness. Human connection. Someone caring enough to help. "Where are you going with this?" Marcus asked gently. "I'm saying that whatever you decide, whether you take my father's offer or stay here or do something completely different, just make sure you're building a life that matters. Not just a business. A life." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Elena wasn't just beautiful and kind. She was wise in a way that only suffering could teach you. "You're pretty smart for someone who spent 3 days barely conscious in a bakery cart storage room," Marcus teased. Elena laughed. "I had a good teacher." They stood there for a moment, the city buzzing around them, two people whose lives had collided by chance and changed forever. Marcus didn't know it yet, but this moment, this conversation, would be the beginning of something neither of them expected. 1 year later, Marcus Stone stood at the altar of Chicago's most prestigious church, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The church was packed. 500 guests. White flowers everywhere. Chandeliers sparkling. String quartet playing softly. But Marcus barely noticed any of it. His eyes were fixed on the doors at the back of the church, waiting. The music changed. The wedding march began. And Elena appeared. She wore a simple white dress. Elegant, understated, perfect. Her father walked beside her, his arm linked through hers, both of them smiling through tears. Marcus's breath caught. Even after a year together, Elena still took his breath away. The past year had been a whirlwind. Marcus had accepted Robert's offer and opened the hotel bakery. Stone's Bakery had expanded to 3 locations. Marcus had gone from street baker to legitimate businessman practically overnight. But the biggest change was Elena. What started as friendship had gradually become something more. Long conversations over coffee. Working side by side at the bakery. Late-night walks through Chicago. Shared dreams and fears and hopes. Marcus had fought it at first. She was a billionaire's daughter. He was a former homeless kid who'd gotten lucky. They came from different worlds. But Elena didn't care about any of that. "You saw me when I was dying," she told him once. "You saw me at my absolute worst, and you treated me like I was worth saving. That's the kind of man I want to spend my life with." 6 months ago, Marcus had proposed. Nothing fancy, just the 2 of them at the original bakery cart, which Marcus had kept as a reminder of where he came from. Elena had said yes before he even finished asking. Now, as she reached the altar and took his hands, Marcus felt like the luckiest man alive. The ceremony began. The pastor spoke about love, commitment, partnership. Marcus barely heard the words. He was too busy looking at Elena, memorizing this moment. They just reached the vows when a commotion erupted from the back of the church. "Stop!" a voice shouted. "This wedding can't happen." Everyone turned. A man pushed his way through the guests, middle-aged, disheveled, waving some papers in his hand. Security guards moved immediately, but Robert raised his hand, stopping them. His face had gone hard, suspicious. "Who are you?" Robert demanded. "My name is Gerald Price," the man announced loudly. "And I have information about Marcus Stone that everyone here needs to know." Marcus's stomach dropped. His hands, which had been holding Elena's so gently, started to shake. Elena squeezed his fingers. "Marcus," she whispered, confused and scared. "I don't know who this is," Marcus said, his voice barely working. Gerald marched down the aisle, guards flanking him but not stopping him. He stopped in front of the altar, breathing hard. "Tell them, Marcus," Gerald said, his voice carrying through the silent church. "Tell them about your arrest." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elena's face went pale. Robert stepped forward, his expression dangerous. "What arrest?" Robert asked quietly. Too quietly. Marcus felt like the floor was disappearing beneath him. He'd known this day might come. Known his past might catch up with him. But not like this. Not today. Not in front of everyone. "Marcus." Elena's voice was small, hurt. "What is he talking about?" Marcus turned to her, his heart breaking at the fear in her eyes. "Elena, I was going to tell you. I should have told you sooner, but—" "He was arrested for theft 7 years ago," Gerald interrupted, thrusting the papers forward. "Criminal record. Right here in black and white." The church erupted. People stood up. Phones came out. Whispers became shouts. Elena pulled her hands away from Marcus's. "Is this true?" Marcus wanted to lie. Wanted to deny everything. But he couldn't. Not to her. Not after everything they'd been through. "Yes," he said, his voice breaking. "It's true." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Robert's face had gone cold. Elena's eyes filled with tears. The guests were buzzing with shock and scandal. "But it's not what you think," Marcus said desperately, looking at Elena. "I need to explain." "Explain what?" Gerald challenged. "That you lied? That you hid your criminal past from this family? That you took advantage of Elena's gratitude to marry into wealth?" "That's not true," Marcus shouted, finding his voice. "I love Elena. This has nothing to do with money or—" "Then why didn't you tell her?" Gerald pressed. "Why hide it if you're so innocent?" Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because Gerald was right. He had hidden it. He had been ashamed. And now it looked exactly like what Gerald was accusing him of: deception. Elena stood frozen, her wedding dress suddenly feeling like a costume. Her father's hand was on her shoulder, protective and tense. The pastor cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps we should pause the ceremony while this gets sorted out." Elena looked at Marcus, tears streaming down her face. "Tell me everything," she whispered. "Right now. Tell me the truth about who you really are." Marcus took a shaky breath. His wedding was falling apart. His past had caught up with him. And the woman he loved was looking at him like she didn't know him at all. This was the moment that would determine his entire future. "Okay," Marcus said quietly. "I'll tell you everything." The church had gone completely silent. 500 people held their breath, waiting for Marcus to speak. Elena stood before him, her wedding dress pristine, her face streaked with tears. Robert was beside her, his hand protectively on her shoulder, his eyes burning into Marcus with a mixture of betrayal and rage. Marcus took a deep breath. His entire future depended on the next few minutes. 7 years ago, Marcus began, his voice steady despite his shaking hands. "I was 25 years old. I'd been homeless for about a year. I was sleeping in shelters, on streets, anywhere I could find." Gerald smirked. "Criminal behavior." "Let him finish," Robert interrupted coldly. Marcus nodded gratefully. "I got a job as a night cleaner at a bakery supply warehouse. Minimum wage. Overnight shift. It wasn't much, but it was something. I was trying to save money, trying to get my life together." Elena's eyes never left his face. "One night, I was cleaning the office area when I found an envelope on the manager's desk. It was open, and I could see cash inside. A lot of cash." Marcus's voice cracked. "I'd eaten nothing but gas station food for 3 days. I hadn't paid rent on my shelter bed. I was so hungry and so tired and so desperate." "So you stole it?" Gerald said triumphantly. "No," Marcus said firmly. "I didn't. But I stood there for a long time, holding that envelope, thinking about taking it. Really thinking about it." The church was silent. "What stopped you?" Elena whispered. Marcus met her eyes. "My mother. She died when I was 16, but I remembered something she always said: the person you are when nobody's watching is the person you really are." Tears ran down his face. "So I put the envelope back. I finished cleaning. I went home." "Then why were you arrested?" Robert demanded. "The next morning, the manager claimed the money was missing. They reviewed security footage and saw me holding the envelope. They called the police." Marcus's hands clenched into fists. "I was arrested for theft. I spent 3 days in jail because I couldn't afford bail." "But you said you didn't take it," Elena said, confused. "I didn't. But I was poor, homeless, and had no lawyer. The manager was a respected businessman. Who do you think the police believed?" Marcus's voice was bitter. "I was going to be charged with felony theft." "What happened?" Robert asked, his tone slightly less hostile. "The 3rd day I was in jail, another employee, a woman named Sarah who worked the day shift, came forward. She'd reviewed all the security footage, not just the part where I was holding the envelope. She found video of the manager himself taking the money the next morning before reporting it stolen." Marcus smiled sadly at the memory. "Sarah barely knew me. We'd maybe spoken twice. But she believed in justice enough to risk her own job to prove I was innocent." Gerald's confidence was faltering. "But the arrest record." "The charges were dropped," Marcus said. "Case dismissed. I was released. But the arrest stayed on my record. And even though I was innocent, people treated me differently after that. Like I was dirty. Like I couldn't be trusted." He turned fully to Elena. "That's why I didn't tell you. I was ashamed. Not because I did something wrong, but because I'd been accused. Because people would look at me differently. Because I was afraid." His voice broke. I was afraid you'd look at me the way you're looking at me right now. Elena's face crumpled. Fresh tears fell. I should have told you, Marcus continued. You deserved to know. I was going to tell you after the wedding, I swear. I didn't want anything hanging over us. I just wanted one perfect day first. He reached for her hands, but stopped himself. I love you, Elena. Everything else in my life, the bakeries, the success, all of it, none of it matters without you. But I understand if you can't forgive me for keeping this secret. The silence stretched on forever. Then Robert spoke. Gerald Price. His voice was ice. Who sent you here? Gerald's face went pale. I came on my own. As a concerned citizen. Liar, Robert said calmly. He pulled out his phone, showed the screen to the crowd. My security team just sent me this. Gerald Price. Employed by Morrison's security firm. Paid $5,000 yesterday to disrupt this wedding. Gasps erupted through the church. Morrison's security firm, Robert continued, is owned by David Morrison, one of my business competitors who lost a major contract to Hayes International last month. He looked at Gerald with disgust. You were paid to destroy my daughter's wedding. Guards moved forward immediately, grabbing Gerald's arms. Wait, Gerald protested. The arrest record is real. I didn't lie about that. No, Robert agreed. But you took a man's moment of vulnerability, a false accusation that nearly destroyed his life, and tried to weaponize it for money. That makes you worse than a liar. As guards dragged Gerald away, Robert turned to Marcus. For a long moment, he just stared. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He extended his hand. Marcus Stone, Robert said quietly. You stood in front of 500 people and admitted something that could have destroyed you. You chose honesty over self-protection. That takes character. Marcus shook his hand, barely believing what was happening. Then Robert turned to Elena. The question is, what do you want to do? All eyes turned to Elena. She stood there in her wedding dress, mascara running, hands trembling. She looked at Marcus. Really looked at him. Then she stepped forward and took his hands. You should have told me, she said softly. I know, Marcus whispered. I'm so sorry. But I understand why you didn't. Elena squeezed his fingers. You saw me at my worst. You know what it's like to have people judge you for things that weren't your fault. She smiled through tears. How could I judge you for the same thing? Marcus couldn't breathe. You saved my life, Marcus Stone. And then you gave me a reason to live it. Elena looked at the pastor. Can we please continue this wedding? The church erupted in cheers and applause. Marcus pulled Elena into his arms, holding her like he'd never let go. The pastor, smiling widely, raised his hands for quiet. Then by the power vested in me. 2 years later, Marcus stood in front of his newest bakery location, the Seventh Stones Bakery across Chicago. But this one was different. This one was special. It wasn't in a trendy neighborhood or a luxury hotel. It was on South State Street, right where his original bakery cart used to sit. The building was modest compared to his other locations. But inside, it was warm, welcoming, and full of purpose. Marcus had designed it with a specific mission. A training bakery where people experiencing homelessness could learn skills, earn money, and rebuild their lives. Just like that woman named Sarah had given him a second chance, Marcus was creating second chances for others. You ready? Elena asked, stepping beside him. She wore jeans and a Stone's Bakery hoodie, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup. No fancy jewelry. Just his wife, his partner, his best friend. Yeah, Marcus said, squeezing her hand. I'm ready. They'd been married for 2 years now. The wedding, after that dramatic pause, had been beautiful. The reception had lasted until midnight. And their marriage had been everything Marcus had never dared to dream of. Partnership, laughter, support, love. Elena had graduated with a master's degree in social work and now ran the charitable foundation they'd started together, the Second Chance Foundation. It provided resources for people experiencing homelessness, funded job training programs, and advocated for criminal justice reform. Robert Hayes, who'd become more than a father-in-law, he'd become a mentor and friend, had matched every dollar they raised, turning their foundation into a multi-million-dollar operation. But it all started here. On this street. At that old bakery cart. The ribbon-cutting ceremony began. The mayor spoke. Local news cameras recorded. Former homeless individuals who'd gone through the training program stood proudly, wearing Stone's bakery uniforms. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he stepped to the microphone, his heart full. 7 years ago, Marcus began, I was arrested for something I didn't do. That arrest nearly destroyed my life. Even though I was innocent, even though the charges were dropped, people treated me differently after that. The crowd listened intently. 5 years ago, I was living in a shelter, working overnight shifts, trying to survive. A kind woman named Sarah believed in me when nobody else did. She risked her job to prove my innocence. She saved my life. Marcus paused, emotion tightening his throat. 3 years ago, I found a young woman dying in an alley behind my bakery cart. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know her father was one of the richest men in Chicago. I just knew she needed help. So I helped her. Elena wiped tears from her eyes. That woman became my wife. Her father became my mentor. And my life changed in ways I never imagined possible. Marcus looked at the building behind him. But the most important thing I learned is this. Success isn't measured in buildings or bank accounts. It's measured in second chances given and second chances taken. He gestured to the former homeless individuals standing in their uniforms. These are the real heroes. People who fell down and got back up. People who made mistakes and chose to learn from them. People who refused to let their past define their future. Applause erupted. After the ceremony, as the sun set over Chicago, Marcus and Elena sat on a bench across the street. The same bench where Marcus used to rest between customers at his cart. You know what's crazy? Elena said, leaning her head on his shoulder. If I'd never been kidnapped, we would have never met. Marcus tensed. They didn't talk about the kidnapping much. The men responsible had been caught and convicted. Justice had been served. But the trauma still lived in Elena, surfacing in quiet moments. I'm sorry that happened to you, Marcus said softly. I'm not, Elena said, surprising him. She sat up and looked at him directly. Don't get me wrong. It was horrible. Terrifying. I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone. She took his hand. But it led me to you. It taught me what really matters in life. It made me who I am today. Marcus understood what she meant. His arrest, his homelessness, all the hardship. It had shaped him into someone who could see suffering and respond with compassion instead of judgment. We should head home, Elena said, standing and stretching. Dinner with Dad at 7, remember? Right, Marcus groaned playfully. Another one of his business opportunity dinners? Elena laughed. Probably. But you love it. She was right. He did. As they walked to their car, a modest sedan despite their wealth, because Marcus refused to forget where he came from. Marcus looked back at the new bakery one more time. The lights were on inside. Through the window, he could see staff closing up for the day, laughing and talking as they worked. Across the street, in the alley where he'd once found Elena barely alive, a community garden now grew. Flowers and vegetables tended by neighborhood volunteers. Beauty growing where pain had once lived. Marcus thought about the long journey that had brought him here. From homeless kid to street baker to business owner to husband to philanthropist. But the role he was proudest of? The one that mattered most? Someone who helped when help was needed. Someone who gave second chances. Someone who remembered what it felt like to be hungry, homeless, and hopeless, and refused to let anyone else feel that way if he could help it. You coming? Elena called from the car. Marcus smiled. "Yeah," he said. "I'm coming." He took one last look at his old corner, the place where his life had changed forever, and walked toward his wife, his future, and a life built on the simple act of feeding a stranger who needed help. Sometimes, Marcus thought, the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. And sometimes, saving someone else's life ends up saving your own. The end. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of hope, redemption, and second chances, and share this with someone who needs to hear that kindness always matters. What was your favorite moment from Marcus and Elena's story? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, you never know how one act of compassion might change someone's entire life. Be someone's miracle today. See you in the next story.